Well, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today, I'm going to give you an update on where we are with our Acura Legend. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into what we actually did here, just as a quick overview for people who haven't watched our previous videos. And I recommend you take a look at our previous videos to kind of catch up to what we've done on this car. And if you're looking to do a head gasket replacement, it's a great kind of guide to what we did so that you can think about what you might want to do. Not to say that the way we did it is like the gold standard, but I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So quickly, we were down in the Santa Fe, New Mexico area for the National Acura Legend meet in 2024, and it became quite apparent real quick that we had a head gasket issue going on. There was symptoms of coolant going into the overflow, but really not returning back into the cooling system after it cooled off, which is what's supposed to happen. That pressure gradient then normalizes and the coolant comes back into the cooling system. Well, for us, that never happened, and so we had to constantly put the coolant from the reservoir back into the radiator and rebleed it. And so if you're ever finding yourself in a situation where coolant is going into the overflow but not returning back, and you're having to take the reservoir out and dump it into the radiator and then rebleed, you've got a head gasket issue because it's probably just a small one, not enough to show its full ugly head, but enough that you've got the signs and symptoms. We also did a head gasket tutorial, if you will, about what is the cause of head gasket issues on the C32 engine. So with all that said, what we did was is we took the heads off, we brought it down to the block, we had the heads professionally machined, and then they did a valve job on it as well. That entailed new valve seating gaskets, as well as we replaced almost every gasket on the intake manifold, all the various parts connected to the intake manifold, as well as some of the ones that you can access in the block. We took apart the rocker arm, put in new O-rings on all of that. So this engine has really a new life now, so to speak, from the top up. From the bottom down, we didn't do anything. We could have taken the engine out to do that, but we decided not to do that. So in my last video, what I shared is that we had a rear main seal leak. Well, that was true, but we also had a predominant leak with our pinion seal that is on the back of the differential. So we removed the transmission off camera. There's a pretty good video that happened right around the same time that we were doing ours, and so it really didn't make sense to film another transmission removal video for you. You can see, I think it's Crafting Cars went ahead and did one. The only thing I would say is he pulls out the intermediate shaft. You don't have to pull out the intermediate shaft. In fact, I recommend you don't mess with it if you don't have to. So just remove the transmission, ignore the intermediate shaft. It's a little bit of a tricky situation getting the transmission to come back onto the back of the block. You just kind of have to wiggle the wheels while they're suspended in air to get that differential to seat just right with the transmission, and then you can put everything back together. So while we had the transmission out, we went ahead and resealed all of that. We put in a new filter, refreshed the fluid in there, and put everything back together. That was probably about a day's worth of work to get it to that point. So now we're at the point where we can start the car for the very first time. Exciting situation here. We've got everything buttoned back up formally, and we can start this car and take it for a spin for the first time in almost 6 months. So we had this situation happen at the end of 2024, and we just parked it. And because the winters here are so harsh, we just decided to take our time. So let's go ahead and experience what it's like to start this engine up for the first time after all of that work in that long winter stay. All right, yes, this thing is running nice right out of the gate. Running smooth. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to check for leaks, and we're also going to check to see if we've got any issues going on. Eventually, we will clean out the oil, so we'll let it idle down, warm up, get up to temperature, bake those solvents, loosen that debris up, and then what we'll end up doing is draining everything out, giving it a nice oil change with a nice filter on it too. All right, so here's where we are with the Acura Legend. We got that first start. The engine is currently off. I just drained the oil, and that is after I ran it for about 15 minutes and checked all the fluids. So fluid check, transmission, coolant obviously bled, and then I drained the oil. And what I did was I used like a really inexpensive filter. This is a Baldwin filter. Not super expensive, basically a throwaway one. Now I've got a more reputable brand on there, and we've got fresh oil in the engine again. And it's important to note that you want to do this, you want to drain that fluid when it's warm. That way all the contamination comes out. Basically your solids are dissolved in aqueous solution, and now you can extract that instead of it getting cold and then sticking to the vital parts. You don't get all of that debris out, that contamination out, because it's not suspended in the oil. It's actually now clinging to the side of the engine. So all of that checked out. Sounds really nice and smooth. Now we're ready to lower the car and get it ready for its first road journey in over 6 months. All right, it's been almost 6 months and she's back out of the garage, and the sun has come out on a day that it wasn't supposed to. Some sort of omen, who knows? But the car's looking pretty good now. Definitely needs a wash, but we're gonna take it for a little spin just to see if we've got any issues. So one of the things that I wanted to do after we did the head gasket replacement is really validate that we solved the problem with the Acura Legend. Because they're so prone to head gasket leaks, it's really hard to determine whether the head gasket leak is due to a head issue in design, a block issue in design, or if it's just simply a poor designed head gasket. And if you followed my other video about taking a deep dive, we really narrowed it down to what we think it is. It's more of a head gasket design and a material quality issue than it is anything else. Obviously, contributing factors, like I said in that video, will lead to a premature failure with those head gaskets, and that can come from a multifactorial causal component to how these head gaskets fail. But what I have here is a borescope set up, and I'm on that number 3 cylinder. So we're taking a look at what the number 3 cylinder looks like right now. And you can see this car has been sitting overnight. And what traditionally happens is when you have a head gasket leak, it slowly introduces coolant into the cylinder. And overnight, that will accumulate, and the coolant will create an extended crank scenario with the engine where the coolant actually contaminates the spark plug, creates kind of a weak detonation, and the other cylinders end up having to carry the load, and eventually the car starts and you get a huge plume of white smoke that comes out of it. Well, we also had that cross-hatching cylinder wall issue. So if you remember, right about there, and you can see this on my head gasket video, the cylinder wall was a little bit corroded right there. You can see it on this camera. And that came from when the piston was all the way up and the coolant was allowed to sit there and just corrode some of that aluminum. And now we know that this was where the head gasket failed, so that makes perfect sense. And because the engine is slanted like this, the coolant accumulated right in that area and caused that to happen. Now, it's not significant enough of an issue to cause any need for repair right there, but it's something that we just noted as we were doing the head gasket replacement. Now, this actually happens in a good way too, because it helps reseat the piston rings as they're moving up and down. So a little bit is fine. Perfectly, honed would be ideal, but this is not a concern. So now we're really just validating our work. We've taken the car out now for a couple times, and we're just going to go ahead and button this up now that we know that we don't have any more problems. Well, we rejoin you in the Acura Legend on our way to our first car show of the year after the long time over winter where we took this car and basically deconstructed the engine and transmission. We removed the transmission to replace that rear main seal, which actually ended up being that pinion seal on the back of the differential. Well, we're driving through Vermont currently, and we're making our way to the Acura and Honda Invitational in Nashua, New Hampshire, which is put on by Sunnyside Acura, which is their local dealership. So this is really the first battlefield testing of the Acura Legend after all of that work, and we're hopeful that this will be a fairly uneventful journey to and from Nashua, New Hampshire. It's approximately 140 miles one way, so it will be certainly an interesting journey. It's a little wet this morning, but the skies are clearing up, and so we're really hoping that this will be, like I said, a fairly uneventful journey to and from, but we're going to get some good footage out of it, and we'll certainly learn some more about the car after all of that work. So we'll catch up with you once we arrive. rejoin you driving back from the Sunnyside Honda and Acura Invitational in Nashua, New Hampshire. I have to say it was a great show. Lots of good cars on display, lots of great people there, really some strong enthusiasts. And I have to say that dealership put on some of the best show I've ever seen. It's kind of like a cars and coffee / car show. They said that they were doing it because of H-Day not being in New Hampshire this year like it typically is. And I'm not sure why, but they decided that in the absence of an H-Day that they were going to put on this event. And I have to say, it is better than H-Day. The loud, obnoxious music that you hear at H-Day, which has been like kind of a turnoff for me, wasn't there. It was, 90s and 80s and early 2000s music, which, I kind of just like. It fits the cars of today and the owners more so. And so we saw a lot of great cars come out. We had an 89 Acura Integra out there. We had a Civic SIR, or CRX SIR, sorry. A JDM S2000 that was imported. Also met up with a guy who imported a Honda Legend KA9. So if you're familiar with that, that would be the RL here in the US. So the predecessor of this car that I'm driving. And really cool to meet up with another enthusiast. Not expecting a JDM Legend to come in, but that was really cool. So we spent some time talking. But really, what is it that we learned, obviously, with this whole road trip? It was that this Legend is mechanically sorted out now. It did fantastic. It's driving great, as obviously you can tell by the fact that I'm driving it right now back from the car show. And about 30 minutes outside of where I live. And this car has been great. It put on a great display as well. Cleans up really nice, thankfully, and so people obviously gravitate towards it at car shows. And it was, the only like older, early 90s, I would say, Acura Legend that was on display. Obviously, the JDM was there, but that's I think it was a 96 or a 97, if I recall correctly. So seeing a second generation Acura Legend obviously pulled in a bunch of people, and got to speak with a lot of great owners, previous owners and enthusiasts of the car, and had a great opportunity to put this car on display and create some fizzes in people's memories with this car being on display. Obviously, there's nothing like seeing a Legend at a car show, so people naturally flock to it anyways. But this car is just a gem and a true honor to be the curator of. And so putting it on display and being able to interact with people is just a joy for me. All in all, the car show was, like I said, great. They did the awards in kind of two ways: a top 25 and then a top 3 best of show. We didn't win one of the top 3 best of shows, but that's okay because there was a lot of great cars out there. And I think the car that won best of show, like first place, was a 1991 NSX that had 11,000 miles on it from the original family. And so that's really stiff competition right there. The car is beautiful, 11,000 miles. Great story too. Grandfather was originally purchased it from that dealership, so that's really crazy to see and hear. Wonderful car too. We placed somewhere in like the top 8, I want to say, or top 7. And when you talk about the cars that you're seeing in this video, which are Integra Type Rs, Civic Type Rs, and Integra Type S's that are like super modified, great cars in their own rights. And then for us to, put on a strong display with a 92 Acura Legend, and obviously ours is like not super rare in any means by the fact that it's an automatic. So it was really cool to, it got some appreciation. And the general manager was awesome. We had some great conversations. Maybe, an opportunity there for a National Acura Legend meet in Nashua. But, we'll see what the future holds. But all in all, this was a great opportunity to battlefield test this car, and I say it was a great pleasure. It's getting a little too much rainy right now for me, so I'm going to wrap this video off by saying it was a great opportunity once again to have Sunnyside Acura put on this car show. us to display the car, battlefield test it after all the work that we put into it. So obviously this is going to be the end of our video series on the Acura Legend head gasket replacement, showing that you too can do something like this in your garage and fix your head gasket. So hopefully we gave you the confidence, hopefully you learned something here, and we'll see you on the next one.